USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to Common Sense 21 Digital Broadcast. Today, we explore your right to evidence-based government communication and take a closer look at the SNAP program under fire from the Trump administration. Democratic accountability forms the foundation of our society. Citizens delegate power through elections, expecting government to act in the public interest with verifiable proof. Transparent information and evidence can improve public trust by 10 to 20% over multi-year periods. Without transparency, electoral choices lose meaning as citizens cannot verify if officials are keeping promises. Real accountability requires continuous oversight through information access, evidence verification, and institutional checks. Government must share factual information with documented sources. Citizens need to examine the evidence using credibility standards, demand answers, and push for policy changes. Transparent communication strengthens democratic institutions by closing information gaps that create distrust. When officials provide clear evidence, it allows for informed participation and prevents misinformation from filling the void. Credible evidence must be authentic, meaning its genuineness can be proved through witness testimony or distinctive characteristics. It must be material, significant enough to influence decisions, and show a clear chain of custody and authoritative origin. The preponderance of evidence standard means claims should be probably true based on relevant and probative evidence. In 2021, $4.5 billion in fraud was confirmed through court verification. However, over 60 court cases rejected election fraud claims due to lack of proof. Recent SNAP fraud claims about 14,000 recipients in luxury vehicles relied on unverified data with no validation records. Distinguishing between confirmed fraud and unsupported allegations is critical for public trust. Government claims should cite specific authoritative sources, such as official documents, audit reports, or verified data. There must be timely access to underlying evidence, and the information should come from credible, validated sources. Independent oversight bodies should have reviewed the claims, and the government must acknowledge any uncertainties or limitations in their evidence. Citizens can evaluate transparency by testing responsiveness to information requests, reviewing audit and budget reports, verifying the independence of oversight bodies, and monitoring enforcement actions for proven violations. File freedom of information requests, assess oversight, and track whether claims are supported by documented spending and independent investigations. Transparent government communication provides specific case data, detailed methodology, peer-reviewed studies, and acknowledges uncertainties. Opaque examples include fraud allegations based on anonymous sources without validation or methodology, and claims lacking access to underlying analysis for review. Public perception shows 72% view government as untrustworthy and 68% as ineffective, with 89% citing misinformation as a major challenge. Treating unverified claims as fact makes real fraud harder to identify, diverts resources from true investigations, and undermines democratic decision-making. Citizens can request information through FOIA, attend public meetings, and use open data portals. Cross-reference statements, check court records, and consult oversight reports to verify claims. Support evidence-based legislation, contact representatives, participate in public comments, and build community organizations to counter misinformation and educate others. We turn now to recent controversies surrounding SNAP, America's largest food assistance program, focusing on fraud claims and battles over privacy in May 2026. SNAP serves 42 million monthly beneficiaries, costing over $100 billion annually. Secretary Brooke Rollins claims widespread fraud, citing luxury car ownership and reporting millions removed due to fraud crackdown and economic gains. The USDA demands 5 years of personal data from all applicants, prompting legal challenges from 21 states and D.C. over privacy and constitutional concerns. A controversial report claimed thousands of SNAP recipients owned luxury cars, but the evidence remains unverified. The report originated from the Foundation for Government Accountability, using anonymous data from an unnamed state. Snopes rated the claim unproven due to lack of evidence and anonymous sourcing. No state was publicly identified, and USDA has not released detailed methodology. Official data shows only 41,476 people were disqualified for fraud among 42 million participants in 2023, less than 1%. Experts from Cornell and the University of Connecticut argue that declines in participation relate to access barriers rather than fraud. Most payment errors are due to administrative mistakes, not intentional fraud. From January to July 2025, 815,000 recipients lost benefits before major policy changes. After the One Big Beautiful Bill passed in July 2025, implementing stricter work requirements and $186 billion in funding cuts, 3.2 million recipients lost benefits in the following 6 months. These changes, not fraud, were the real driver of the decline. In May 2025, the USDA demanded states turn over 5 years of personal information on all SNAP applicants, affecting over 40 million people. Data requested included names, social security numbers, addresses, and more. States argued their existing anti-fraud systems were sufficient and that the federal demand threatened billions in administrative support. California and New York led a coalition filing a lawsuit on July 28, 2025, arguing the data collection violated privacy protections and the Administrative Procedure Act. A preliminary injunction was granted in October 2025, blocking USDA from collecting data in coalition states except Nevada. States fear the data would be used for immigration enforcement. A March 2025 executive order demanded unfettered access to data from all state programs. The administration began sharing IRS and Medicaid data with immigration officials. Lawsuits described the USDA demand as part of a surveillance campaign. While undocumented immigrants cannot receive SNAP, eligible U.S. citizen children qualify. States worry data sharing will discourage families from seeking assistance. On December 3, 2025, Secretary Rollins threatened to cut federal funds to states refusing the data request, affecting 42 million recipients and billions in aid. Most SNAP beneficiaries are children, elderly, or people with disabilities. State leaders called the threat appalling and demanded immediate funding release to prevent hunger, while scrambling to implement new requirements. Stricter work requirements and eligibility checks increase administrative barriers for families, while funding threats create uncertainty for vulnerable populations. Centralized data collection raises surveillance concerns that may discourage eligible families from applying. Most payment errors stem from administrative mistakes, raising questions about the cost-effectiveness of enhanced surveillance measures. Let's understand how SNAP works and why the current privacy debate is central to its administration. SNAP, formerly food stamps, helps 41 million Americans each month buy food, with an average benefit of $292 per person. The federal government funds all food benefits, and administrative costs are split with states. Families use electronic benefit cards at authorized retailers and farmers markets. USDA funds SNAP food benefits and sets eligibility rules, while states run local offices and determine eligibility. States and the federal government split administrative costs. Once approved, beneficiaries receive monthly benefits on EBT cards, which can be used like debit cards at stores. Each state designs its application process according to federal guidelines. Most households must have gross income at or below 130% of the federal poverty line and net income at or below 100%. Resource limits are $3,000 or $4,500 for seniors or people with disabilities. States collect detailed personal and financial information to determine eligibility, with deductions for various household expenses. Benefit calculations assume households spend 30% of net income on food. The maximum for a 4-person household in 2026 is $994 per month, though most receive less. States recalculate benefits regularly, and the sensitive financial data collected is central to the current federal data sharing controversy. The USDA, under a March 2025 executive order, demanded 5 years of personal data, including social security numbers, addresses, and purchase records, from over 42 million Americans. States refusing to comply risked losing federal funding. This demand went beyond normal aggregate reporting, seeking personally identifiable information for all applicants since January 2020. States argue the data demand violates the Privacy Act and SNAP Act, which restrict data use to program administration. The Paperwork Reduction Act requires justification for such collection. Officials fear data sharing for immigration enforcement, cybersecurity risks, and discouraging eligible families. Recipients provided data under the understanding it would be protected. In September 2025, a federal judge issued a restraining order protecting 21 states from the data collection requirement, citing likely violations of SNAP law. The USDA had already announced plans to share data beyond what federal law allows. Separate lawsuits from recipients and advocacy groups further challenged the collection. The SNAP data conflict raises questions about balancing oversight and privacy in the age of big data. Over 78 million Medicaid and 5 million unemployment insurance recipients face similar demands. Expanding federal data access threatens cooperative federalism, and privacy laws written before big data may not protect against modern re-identification risks. Solutions include public notice, independent oversight, graduated data access, clear legal frameworks, and privacy-enhancing technologies. Federal laws offer roadmaps for responsible sharing, while best practices call for data minimization, purpose limits, and accountability. States and agencies could develop standardized agreements with explicit privacy safeguards. Over 130 million Americans participate in federal state programs where privacy and oversight are at stake. Court outcomes will set precedents for SNAP, Medicaid, and more. Public trust relies on protecting personal data. Transparent practices foster accountability, while citizens can engage through representatives and public comment. Let's examine the data, disputes, and transparency issues behind the SNAP fraud claims now under investigation. SNAP serves 42 million Americans with an average benefit of $187 per person, costing over $100 billion annually. Secretary Rollins claims large-scale fraud involving deceased and duplicate recipients, but questions remain about data validation and methodology. All fraudulent payments are improper, but not all improper payments are fraud. Improper payments may result from administrative errors and are not automatically fraud. Fraud requires intentional deception and must be determined by judicial or legal adjudicators, not agency officials. In 2023, 11.7% of SNAP payments, totaling $10.5 billion, were classified as improper, but less than 1% were confirmed as fraud. Most errors stem from insufficient documentation, not deception. The payment error rate reflects administrative mistakes, not intentional wrongdoing. In November 2025, Rollins announced claims of 186,000 deceased and 500,000 duplicate recipients, based on anonymous data, with no public verification or methodology. Snopes rated the claims unproven. USDA has not released data or methodology for independent verification. The viral luxury car claim originated from anonymous data without public verification. Snopes rated the claim unproven due to lack of records. Examples may include identity fraud investigations. No methodology explains how ownership was matched or identity fraud ruled out. USDA demanded 5 years of personal data, affecting over 40 million people, with funding cuts threatened for noncompliance. States argue existing systems prevent fraud effectively. A 21-state coalition led by California and New York filed a constitutional challenge. A lawsuit in Northern California argues the data collection violates privacy protections in the Administrative Procedure Act. A preliminary injunction blocks USDA from collecting data in coalition states. States believe data will be shared for immigration enforcement despite legal prohibitions. A March 2025 order demanded unfettered access to state program data. USDA demands states provide personal data on over 40 million people, but withholds public datasets validating its claims. No methodology or verification records are available for fact-checkers. Despite the National Accuracy Clearinghouse operating in 15 states, USDA insists existing systems are insufficient. Evidence-based accountability means authentic, material, and well-sourced claims, transparent methodology, and independent verification. Unverified claims erode trust, making real fraud harder to spot and wasting resources. Democracy suffers when citizens can't distinguish evidence-based claims from rhetoric. Distinguishing improper payments from fraud ensures appropriate action. Evidence-based approaches prevent wasted resources, while centralized data collection raises surveillance fears and discourages eligible participation. Transparency enables informed debate, but without verification, the public cannot evaluate government claims. You have the power to demand evidence, track justice, and push for change. Civic engagement is critical for accountability and reform. Over 130 million Americans depend on federal-state programs. With 72% distrusting government, transparency and evidence-based communication are essential for restoring trust. 21 states have sued for privacy protections, highlighting the importance of public involvement. Effective civic action means demanding government methodology, tracking lawsuits, and pushing for reforms that balance oversight with privacy protections and constitutional rights. Citizens should ask how data was collected and if validation records exist. Require clear definitions for terms like fraud. The luxury car snap claim used unverified data, while court cases found election fraud claims lacked proof. Transparency allows for independent verification and accountability. Authenticity means evidence is genuinely what it claims to be. Materiality ensures evidence is significant. Provenance shows authoritative origins. The preponderance standard requires claims be probably true based on relevant and probative evidence, not speculation. Anyone can file a FOIA request by clearly describing the records, identifying the agency, and submitting a request via email, mail, or portal. Agencies must respond within 20 business days. Appeals are possible if denied. Be specific and prepared to pay fees for processing. A federal judge blocked USDA data collection in September 2025, protecting 21 states and 42 million people. Courts found USDA planned to share data beyond legal limits. Agencies must publish a system of records notice before collecting personal data, which USDA initially failed to do. Use the PACER database to access federal court documents and dockets. Follow legal organizations for updates, track injunctions and appeals, and read court opinions to understand legal reasoning and accountability measures. Reform should include public notice, independent oversight, graduated access to data, purpose limitations, and privacy-enhancing technologies. Federal privacy laws provide responsible data sharing roadmaps. Best practices involve data minimization and enforceable safeguards. Restore protections for inspector generals, strengthen civil service protections, prohibit political blacklists, and require judicial approval before sharing data with immigration enforcement. Mandate public disclosure of data sharing agreements, privacy impact assessments, citizen privacy review boards, and penalties for unauthorized data sharing. Combine individual and collective action for effective advocacy. Contact representatives, submit public comments, join organizations, and support strategic litigation. Use resources like FOIA.gov and advocacy groups to amplify your efforts. Comment on proposed rules through regulations.gov. Technical and legal objections carry the most weight. Coordinate with groups, cite evidence, and track agency responses to your concerns. Coalitions of diverse groups multiply advocacy impact. The Strengthening Accountability Networks project connects citizen groups in 26 countries, building global momentum for responsive government. Coalitions provide expertise, institutional memory, and fundraising capacity needed for sustained campaigns. Begin with local government meetings, records, requests, and budget monitoring. Join local civic organizations to develop oversight skills that scale up to federal advocacy. Local transparency wins can be replicated elsewhere, and participatory budgeting has shown real impact on services for the poor. This month, file your first FOIA request and pick a lawsuit to monitor. This quarter, submit a public comment and join an advocacy organization. This year, attend government meetings and build local coalitions. Ongoing, demand methodology, track court rulings, push for privacy reforms, and educate others. Let's examine the double standard in government data use, where scrutiny is intense for the poor but lax for the powerful. SNAP serves 42 million Americans, yet USDA claims of deceased and luxury car-owning recipients lack verification. Meanwhile, wealthy fraud receives less attention despite $4.5 billion in confirmed cases in 2021. The poor face intense investigation, while powerful fraudsters escape scrutiny. Improper payments at 11.7% mostly come from administrative errors, not fraud. Actual fraud is less than 1%. Experts stress the importance of not conflating improper payments with fraud, as it wastes investigative resources and stigmatizes recipients. The luxury car fraud claim originated from unverified anonymous data and lacks public methodology. SNAP applicants must provide extensive documentation, unlike the government's sweeping fraud accusations based on unsupported sources. USDA announced claims of 186,000 deceased and 500,000 duplicate recipients, demanding 5 years of data on over 40 million people and threatening funding cuts. However, the agency has provided no supporting data sets or methodology, while states argue their systems already prevent fraud. Between January and July 2025, 815,000 recipients lost benefits under existing rules. After the One Big Beautiful Bill in July 2025, 3.2 million more lost benefits, nearly quadrupling the baseline rate. Policy changes, not fraud, drove the decline, though officials claimed otherwise to avoid accountability. A coalition led by California and New York filed suit in July 2025, arguing data collection violated privacy laws. A preliminary injunction blocked USDA data collection. A March 2025 executive order demanded broad data access, and states fear centralized databases may be shared for immigration enforcement, discouraging eligible families from seeking assistance. SNAP applicants face extensive documentation requirements while the government makes unverified accusations. The administration threatens funding cuts to states protecting privacy, yet wealthy fraud cases receive little attention or investigation. This contrast highlights a double standard that stigmatizes the poor, while the powerful are largely unchecked. With 72% distrusting government and 89% seeing misinformation as a major issue, evidence must be authentic, material, and well-sourced. Claims should be independently verifiable. Unverified allegations waste resources and damage democracy by making real fraud harder to identify. Demand evidence from officials, file FOIA requests for data and methodology, and cross-reference claims with court records. Support laws requiring verifiable data before fraud allegations, vote based on accountability, and build community power to counter misinformation. Always ask, where is the evidence, and why do wealthy fraudsters face less scrutiny?